This is Max Feldman, and we're back for episode 4 of the Next Is Now podcast. Thank you as always for tuning in. We've got a big episode on tap. First, Eric Hamford, MAID's Director of National Scouting, is hopping on to talk the class of 2027 as we just recently debuted our top 150 national rankings for the class. We're going to talk about projection and also hit on some of the top guys to look out for. After that, Travis Graff is coming on to talk our national ranking updates for 2024, 2025, and 2026. We're going to talk some risers, guys we're higher on than the rest of the industry, and more as the fall approaches here. Let's get into it. Welcome, Eric Hamford, the VP of MAID and our Director of National Scouting. How are you? Appreciate you hopping on.
Absolutely, Max. I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing good. Excited to get into it. So we've recently just dropped our 2027 rankings here, and us being the lone platform ranking a top 150 for not just the freshman class, but all 4 classes. It's a brand new group for most people just coming onto our rankings. So what are your thoughts on the class as a whole, as just an overview?
Well, 2027's put in a bit of a tough spot coming off of 25 and 26. Honestly, those 2 classes, as people are now starting to find out, were and are absolutely loaded groups. So coming into the winter, when we were really first starting to seriously eval them at the beginning of their 8th grade years, there was a letdown, I think, from our group internally. And I think anyone, even coaches, I remember were making a lot of comments like, this class isn't the class from last year. This class isn't the class from 2 years ago. So there was always going to be a regression to the mean, and that was just, I think, a natural part of it. There are some guys I really like in this class, truthfully. I think, when you see guys this early and you're leaving 8th grade to begin your freshman year of high school, there's a ton of guys who aren't on the stage yet who are going to get there. We get a lot of them in middle school, but there are always going to be guys who, they haven't even developed yet, and they're going to pop up, throughout, whether it's freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, whatever. So I'm hopeful that we'll have a good group of those guys that they're going to come in and give better support to this class, but it's definitely not as strong as the past 2 years.
So we're going to get into a few of the guys at the top, but first I wanted to talk about just ranking freshmen in general. Obviously, it's something that not many people do. We're the only ones ranking all 4 classes. So what are a few of your big principles just in terms of projecting these young guys just out so far? Obviously, projection gets easier as you get close to the end of high school basketball, end of college basketball. We have a little bit longer ways to go. So what are a few things that you look out for?
Right. Obviously, the projection, is key. Everybody wants to look at long-term projection. You obviously want to be able to identify the guys early who are going to end up, winning the marathon, that long race, which we know is, a 10-year, 15-year, 20-year process where some of these guys end up. You want to be the ones who were first on those guys and see those guys all the way through their professional careers. For us, I would say obviously the skills. The skill translation is a big part of that. Are they able to shoot the ball? Do they have a high IQ? Are they unselfish? The on-court stuff, while it's important, you're obviously having to look at, especially this young, the body type, projectable frames, what you're looking at to see how much growth potential is left in them. I think one thing that gets confused a lot at the middle school level, especially 7th and 8th grade, is there are a lot of guys who are physically plateauing and they have been dominant and the production is unmatched, but it's a tough conversation because we see the complete other side of it where it's like, okay, these guys have been really good for the past 2, 3, 4 years, but I like this guy over here who's actually going to bloom and blossom and probably lap. He might be the 5th or 6th option on his team right now, but we like him long-term better than anyone else. And that's a different conversation than you're having with high school prospects. So I think that's what makes it very unique. So obviously you're looking at some of those off the court indicators. You're looking at the family genetics. You're looking at, a lot of the intel stuff that you're looking at as these guys go up the ladder in terms of what are they like as kids off the court? Do they love the game? Do they work hard? Are they going to continue to work? Those are all things that are not surface level that you have to dig a little bit deeper on. And I think that's why, we do a really good job with that, because we're very thorough as a group.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, just from being in the gym around you over this last year, is there any small things that you look for in specific, like you mentioned, age and size and a bunch of different things? Is there anything like small or maybe a minor detail for most people that is more meaningful in your eyes?
Obviously, the age is important, and I mean shoe size. The size of your feet, your hands, your wingspan. A lot of that stuff isn't recorded, especially at the younger levels, but you could do the eye test on some of those things. You could get some of those things recorded. But again, those are deeper than surface level, but that is so crucial in a lot of the evaluations I've made over the years. And I think that's why I've been able to hit on a lot of kids, because you're doing more than just evaluating what's on the court.
Sure. You touched on that a little bit, and it led me into something I was going to ask later on. But a big thing is just this overall size of a lot of these guys, and ignoring at times, not necessarily ignoring, but putting to the side the productivity and the buzz that people talk about. Oh, this guy dropped 30, always putting up 40 and 20, whatever it might be. And essentially looking for the things that will be there that aren't there yet. And obviously it leaves more room for error and things like that. But what do you think makes us more geared, like kind of the best people to be there, to be doing so in terms of ranking these guys and evaluating these guys early on in comparison to other people?
Well, we obviously have the body of work to see them over a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever that may be. I mean, some of these guys have been in our system from the time they're in 5th or 6th grade, right? So you're seeing that growth in real time, where I think the one thing that makes it very unique for us too, and why these evaluations are actually very important, especially as you're going up the flagpole to the high school level. You might have an analyst who sees player X as a sophomore or a junior, and they fall in love with the kid right away, and they're having a conversation with you or me or whatever, and they're saying, oh, I love the way he can shoot the ball, or he can do this, or he can do that. You have a whole different view of that player, where you might say, well, he was doing that stuff in 8th grade, and there really hasn't been any progression in that area of his game. So you might look at that prospect as, he hasn't really done much since I first kind of really liked him in 8th grade, where that person who's getting the first view of them in 10th or 11th grade, it's a whole different look. And I think that puts us at an advantage. Obviously, I look at us as, guardians of the game in some ways. In the middle school landscape, there's a lot of guys who are ranking kids and doing things for, whatever you may call it. They're not in the gym with us. I can tell you that as one thing, right? Like, there's a lot of outlets who are doing these national rankings. I know now, as you've done a full year with us plus, you never see those guys in the gym, and that's where the majority of these rankable kids are playing. So we're not doing favors. We're not doing, you know what I mean? Everything we're doing is organic, and it's based on what we see, what we know. And there's no one at that level who is, more ready to rank those kids than we are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big thing in my head, and what we've talked about some of, is each evaluation, each time you see a guy, is essentially a data point. And us ranking these guys compared to a lot of other people, we by far have the most data points watching these guys throughout the last year, many times, and for some of these guys throughout multiple years since our 6th, 7th graders. So
you're right. It's all about data points. And I think the one thing that's really cool for us is it's harder at this level, truthfully. Like, obviously it's difficult at the high school level as well. It's an inexact science to rank these kids and evaluate these kids in general, but it's a lot more difficult doing it when they're, end of 8th grade year, they're so early in the process of, their basketball journeys, with so many different factors coming in. And we have to do a good job of navigating that fine line between production and the projection, right? A lot of these kids have earned those accolades from what they've done at the middle school level. So you have to be sensitive to that and reward them for that. But at the same time, the goal at the end of the day is to get it right with a lot of these kids who are going to go the farthest in their basketball careers. So it's about, you know, servicing both sides of the fence, so to speak.
Leading into the actual class, talking about some of these guys, starting at the top for us, it came down to, I think, just 4 guys kind of separated themselves from the pack. It was Baba Oladutun, Jalen Mitchell, Paul Osaruyi, and Lincoln Cosby. Just for that group in general, maybe each guy, what stood out for you?
It's a pretty good group right off the bat. So those are the type of guys that you want to have at the top early on based on that projection that we talked about. For Baba, you know, what did he measure in at Midwest MSA? You said close to 6'8" at this point, right?
Yeah.
The fact that he's already a 6'8" playmaker, shot maker, doing things off the dribble, I mean, those are some impressive translatable skills right off the jump. So for me, you know, he played up as a 7th grader at the 8th grade level last year, and then came back, got better, has continued to grow, has the genetics factor that we talk about. So to me, that he's kind of a no-brainer, honestly. Like, I don't think you're going to find too many people who see him and don't see it, right? Jalen Mitchell, another guy, obviously has the projectable frame, 6'7 plus, has played up on the Nike EYBL circuit at the 15U level this year and has produced. So he has that production and projection that we talk about. Paul Osaruyi, the same way, 6'9 plus, bouncy, athletic, played up EYBL. And then Lincoln Cosby, another guy who, you know, 6'8 plus, has signed on with Overtime Elite, can shoot it from the outside, can do some stuff on the inside. I mean, those are the guys that have kind of the no-brainer skill sets with a ton of room to grow.
Totally. I think with the top 4 guys, breaking them in half, I think Baba and Lincoln Cosby in specific are 2 guys that are maybe a little bit more potential than production at this stage, but have similar frames, super wiry. You can see the skill level, and we think there's a lot of room to grow into it, whereas the other 2 guys, and Paul and Jalen Mitchell, they've both proven at higher levels, with Paul playing at the FIBA level, playing some E16 with Arizona Unity, and then Jalen Mitchell putting up 14 and 5 with Brad V Elite at a higher level. 2 guys who have proven the productivity, and we think they're going to get better, and obviously have the measurables on the side. I've already proven it at a pretty high level. So, like you mentioned, a pretty high level top 4 there.
Absolutely.
We talked about genetics a little bit. We hit on it with a few of those guys. In this group in general, looking back to 2026, we had a ton of bloodlines. 2027, I don't think it's quite as many, but definitely a lot of guys hitting on some here. In the top 5, we have Ryan Hampton, the younger brother of RJ Hampton. Moving down the list, we have Beckham Black, little brother Anthony Black, Aleem Olajuwon, is a relative of Hakeem Olajuwon, Griffin Starks, Dawson Petit, Dash Daniels, Jason Gardner Jr., the Barnes twins. There's a few others as well. So any in specific stand out for you? And then leading into that, what do you think makes the DNA aspect of these guys just so pivotal in terms of evaluation?
Well, one, Ryan Hampton jumps off the page a little bit in terms of a guy who, you know, he's already near probably, 6'5", 6'6" at this point, plays with the ball in his hands predominantly, has that projectable frame, produced at a high level, got better as the year went on. And then obviously, like we said, he has that genetic portion too. So right away, it's like he checks a bunch of those different boxes. So he sticks out, you know, right off the jump for me. In terms of just genetics in general, if you take a look at the track records of guys over the years who have that piece, a lot of them do pan out. And I remember someone told me when I first started my scouting career, like, you just don't bet against genetics. That's one thing you always bet on the genetics. And I think some of that is not only are you blessed with, you know, the size, the frame, the athleticism, the quickness that other people don't have, but there's also a part there too, depending on the dynamic of the situation, you have a mental aspect to that as well, right? Like if your mom or dad played in the league, you're getting, or at the college level, at a high level, you're getting instruction, training, keys, gems from them that they've passed on that nobody else is getting. So you get an advantage just by having that in your bloodline and having that in your household. So I think it's a two-part thing there, right? The on-court, but as well as the off-court, where you're getting advantages on both sides that the common player is not getting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you mentioned, just growing up around the game and being around pros and seeing that mindset has been a big thing that we've seen rather quickly. Just you don't really bet against, for sure. So I've got a few more here. The last one I would ask in terms of just this class right now, are there any guys that we didn't talk about outside the first top 4, top 5 that you think maybe have the biggest opportunity to make a leap into that area, or guys you think are maybe a little underrated at this stage?
I think a guy that we both like, Gabe Naismith from South Florida, played with 𝘖thletes Elite this year. He's going to be playing at Montverde Academy for high school, which obviously, hey, he has some great projectable on-court skills, but then you put him in an environment at Montverde where he's going to be really challenged from day one to be the best player that he can be, honestly. And that's what you want to see from, a player that age, is they're not running from those opportunities. He wants that head on, and he wants to be in the gym with a lot of those guys. So I think he's a guy that we have right outside that top 5 that if he can make a move, it will probably be sooner than later, especially as he grows and continues to just, grow off the court and mentally as a player as well. So Gabe is one guy I really like.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great one. Obviously, going into a situation where maybe people won't really see him much right away, like might not be the guy that's putting up big numbers early in his high school career, but playing around 5-star guys and practicing around those guys and seeing how that program functions day to day is, I think, going to be huge for his development.
Well, who would be your guy, or a few guys that you like?
There's a lot of guys I really like. Honestly, I think there's a lot of interesting guys even moving into like the 20s, 30s that I think have a big opportunity to jump up. I think what makes this kind of fun too at this age is like, you may have a guy who initially you have at like 50, right? But they're so not even close to being a producer that, one, you can't put them anywhere else for now, right? Or it's just completely inaccurate. But within a year, they could be that guy who all of a sudden jumps 35 spots, which is a little different than the high school side too. So you really could go a ton of different directions here. Yeah, and I think that's something that we've talked about just in terms of like getting ahead of it, is like mass fluctuation with these rankings is inevitable. Like, it's going to happen. Like you mentioned, I think we do a great job with ranking these guys, but the odds that guys are going to make leaps even from 150 to top 10, like stuff like that's going to happen, and guys in the top 25 are probably going to drop out.
I was going to say, it goes both ways. I mean, we're not going to sit here and pretend that, we don't miss and that things don't change. And anyone who says that as an evaluator is lying to themselves and to everybody else.
Yeah, totally. But getting back to your question, 2 of my favorite guys, I think, outside the top 20. First one is Kavian Bryant from Texas. I know a guy that we both liked a lot, and on one of the best teams that I think we saw all year with pro skills. He wasn't able to play in finale because he injured his wrist, but just a super smart guard. Looks like he's going to continue to grow, can really shoot it. One of my favorite guys just in terms of his approach, and a guy that got better throughout the year. And then the other one of the East Coast guys, 𝘼thletes Brown, a guy that we saw pretty early. Got great size, looks like he's going to continue to grow and can really shoot the ball. So just 2 of my favorite guys outside the top 20 that I'm excited to see how they start their high school career, but 2 guys that I think are going to be best a long time from now.
I was waiting for, I expected Kavian Bryant and 𝘼thletes Brown. Those were 2 guys from day one that you kind of fell in love with. I was expecting a little bit of Amari Upshaw love from you.
Yeah, that's a great one too. Amari Upshaw is a breakout guy at finale. Seems like every few years there's a Canadian kid that comes and is like their dude with UPlay. He seems like another guy that I think could grow into that. Definitely a little bit further away, but great athlete, can definitely score it. super tough, competitive. So no, that's a good call. One I forgot about, but he'll debut as a top 40, top 50 guy for sure. Any other guys for you, or
you could go a lot of different places with this again? I mean, one guy that's not a finished product, but way more on the producer end, but people are super excited. Tyler Sutton.
Yeah,
Tyler Sutton's been really good all year as far as like pure floor general, who sees the game and is way beyond his years, who could step into a starting role. You know what I mean? Whether it's playing up grassroots or at the high school level, he's going to catch a lot of guys, you know, attention who haven't seen 2027s yet pretty early, and people are going to be excited as just another Philly area playmaker, which every year they seem to have another one come out, like a Philly tough guard who is, you know, really fun to watch. Great kid, one of my favorite kids in terms of just, you know, he's mature for his age. He really wants to be really good. So I'm excited to see how he transitions to the high school level, and I know that you like Tyler as well.
Yeah, that's a great one. I think a guy, like you mentioned, already has 5 high major offers before playing a minute of high school basketball. And I think a minute into pretty early in his high school career, I think he's going to be a guy that people understand why he's already got that offers, already got that attention. That's definitely a good one.
I have a question for you too, in terms of, obviously we see a lot of these guys as 8th graders. There aren't many that we don't see, but there are always a few guys that we don't see, right? Or that we hear about through the grapevine for one reason or another. They're just not in our stuff. We've avoided. It happens every single year.
Yeah.
Is there a guy in this class that you are kind of itching to see, that you've heard about, that you haven't got really a chance to evaluate? Whether it's, you know what I mean, in person, you've probably seen film on them or whatever, but somebody that you're really excited about seeing.
Yeah, I think there's like 3 or 4 guys that come to mind, and I've seen a little bit of some of them. The first one would be 𝘿evelopment, kid we'll have in the top 20, another Canadian kid, actually. Always seen him in FIBA stuff, playing U16s, got great size, great athlete. So excited to see him. 𝘿aximizing Miller, another overtime league guy from Indiana, guy I'm really excited to see more of. Seen a little bit at Run and Slam in the spring, but I think a guy that's going to be really good. He's really thrived playing up with George Hill All-Indy for a few years now. Beckham Black, I think, is going to be really interesting. Obviously, his brother was a lottery pick this year for the Orlando Magic and had a crazy story with his growth spurt, being a great football player. So a guy that I think could kind of has that recipe to be a late bloomer, but a guy that obviously we're going to be paying attention to a little bit earlier on. And then I think the big one probably is 𝘿evelopment out of Texas. Is kind of a guy that we've heard good stuff about, but haven't seen a ton of, and obviously has big time genetics there. So excited to see more of him for sure. How about you?
I would say one kid, and it's kind of unique because he's from, you know, around where I live. Zion Green at Imhotep is another one who makes a ton of sense as like a 6'7", 6'8 plus, wing skills. All the early reports on him are that, you know, he has a chance to be the next guy out of that program, which, you know, a kid that size, that age, he probably is going to trend closer to the top of the rankings, especially as what he already has. And in this class, they need a guy like that.
Totally. Last one I forgot to mention, there was Marte Barnes, kid out of Florida, that we've heard great stuff about. I think he'll be top 40 guy. Excited to see more of him. Obviously an area that's produced a ton of talent last few years, and every year it seems like. But that's all I got. I want to wrap up with a question I try to ask everyone that comes on now. Forgot for a few there, but you reminded me just with your backdrop. Your favorite all-time basketball jersey, if you had to pick like 1 or 2.
Favorite all-time basketball jersey? I got a Rasheed Wallace Portland Trailblazers today.
Wow.
It's not my favorite, but I was actually waiting a long time to get that one. Darius Miles, LA Clippers, red, is one that, you know, hits close to home for me. He was one of my favorite players growing up. I got some good ones. I got Jamal Crawford, Rainier Beach High School.
Great.
I just got a Nate Robb, New York Knicks. I mean, I got You asked the right question. I got a ton of different jerseys. I'm on the lookout for the white LA Clippers Quentin Richardson, though. That's another one from like my childhood that I need my hands on.
Yeah, that closet runs deep with jerseys there.
Oh, no doubt. The problem.
Thank you for coming on. Definitely will have you on again soon. But appreciate you coming on and taking some time.
Absolutely. I enjoyed being on.
Welcome on, Travis Graff. Appreciate you taking the time again. How are you doing?
Doing good. Doing very good. What about yourself?
Doing well. Appreciate it. So September 1st, come and gone now. And well, it's the big debut for the 2027 top 150 rankings. That's kind of the big thing for us right now. We've also updated the 2024, 2025, and 2026 rankings. So we're going to dive into a little bit of the topics that we kind of ran through as we were breaking down the discussion for rankings updates and talk about a little bit of the movement. Wanted to start at the top with who are some guys, let's start with 2024, that you found yourself coming into the update, coming into that War Ring meeting of guys that you wanted to get a push on?
The main one that comes to mind is I thought we were very low on 𝘼thletes from New World. I really liked him this summer whenever I saw him. Versatile forward that can his handles developed a little bit, can hit shots from multiple areas on the court. The athleticism is very good as well. I think he's a guy that you could possibly see end up as a top 20, top 25 guy in time in this class. I want to see how he looks this year at IMG, but I think we got him moving in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. The one for me in 2024 was 𝘼aximizing. Just a guy that I feel like it happens every year where we're trying to watch so many different levels, so many different teams where a few guys get lost in the mix. He's a guy that I kind of have come back on the last 2 weeks and gotten a chance to watch some more of, taking a look at the numbers, and the guy who I think just had a really strong spring. So we're on a really good team, bad team. Grew in some key areas from last year and just kind of took different steps forward in areas where he already was very strong, just in terms of creating off the dribble, getting to the line, creating for other guys and taking care of the ball. So a guy that I know we're higher on than the rest of the industry now, and I kind of came into the rankings update feeling strong with that one. But the other big thing with us in 2024, just want to talk a little bit about the top of the rankings. Obviously, Cooper Flagg's the big one, but we also did have a few other shakeups with Ace Bailey coming in the second spot, Jaden Quaintance at the third spot, and then Dylan Harper at the fourth spot. So what were a few things just in terms of the very top of the class that you thought coming into it and now looking back on the rankings?
Well, I think it's obvious to say that the Cooper Flagg and Jaden Quaintance reclasses really strengthened the top of a class that many people viewed as weak up until a few weeks ago. Like you said, we got Ace Bailey at number 2. We were going back and forth. We had to bring some other Made Hoops members into the discussion on that because I was Jaden Quaintance at 2 and you were Ace Bailey and you went out on that. I don't think you can go wrong with either one of them. Dylan Harper he slid down to number 4, but he's still in the discussion for the top player in the class. He is a guy that has a long track record that's proven it on every stage. He's always produced, so it's not a knock against him whatsoever. But he and then we got 𝘿evelopment and VJ Edgecombe in there at 5 and 6. We're very high on them. I know you're particularly high on VJ Edgecombe, ain't you?
Yeah, I think those were 2 of the big ones, even outside the top 4. But I think that's good to mention, especially with Dylan Harper. Like, definitely a guy that did nothing to lose that spot. Just really high-level, long-term prospects coming to the picture now. And Ace Bailey seems like he's taking next steps forward in his game. A guy who's a little bit younger for the class, so it makes sense that he's turned a little bit of the corner with his development now. But yeah, outside that top 4, 𝘿evelopment and VJ Edgecombe, 2 guys that I'm pretty sure we are the highest on than the rest of the industry as well. So 2 guys that have come on really strong over this last year, with 𝘿evelopment, probably the best shooter in the class. Guy who can really knock it down off the catch, but also create for himself. And then Edgecombe put together a huge season at Lehigh, really exploded onto the scene, and now seems like continues to get better and better every weekend now. Definitely in for a huge senior season for him. But yeah.
When When was your first viewing of PJ Edgecombe?
That's a great question. I want to say it was that first weekend with 𝘼. I saw Southeast Elite a few times that last summer, but never saw him. I must have just missed him. But it was the season with 𝘼 where I just kept putting up big numbers those first few weekends, and it's like, wait, what's going on here?
Yeah. The first time I saw him live was at the Jordan Holiday Classic last year at the Gauchos gym, and he couldn't have put on a more impressive performance. That's the day that he put Justin Edwards on a poster, and that video went all over Instagram, all over Twitter. Really started to fall in love with his game and what he could be after that day.
Yeah, absolutely. But moving on down here to 2025, I know you have a few guards that you came into it really excited about, some guys that made some big jumps up within the top 25. So what are your thoughts on those guys? I know Kingston Flemings and Tyler Jackson were two of those big ones for you.
Yeah, Kingston Flemings plays for SA Future. So not a prominent AAU program, but every time you see him play, it's just, he passes the eye test. It's pretty easy to see, honestly. Everybody should be able to see it whenever you watch him play. Really good at getting to the rim. He's gotten a lot taller. I'd say he's about 6'3" now, maybe 6'4". Can score from multiple areas, multiple levels. And he also thrives as a decision maker on the ball, thrives as a creator on the ball. And I just really like where he stands in terms of the other, like in comparison to the other guards in the class. And then Tyler Jackson's another one that I wrote about. He's a little bit on the shorter side than I particularly like at the guard spot, but man, he scores the ball so well. And then I'm really bullish on how he can hone in his point guard skills and become a lead guard over time. So that's what I'm thinking on with him, but he's arguably the best scorer in the class.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we have that tier right now of guards in 2025. The top, it's a lot of bigger guys, a lot of big wings, forwards, big guys. But you move past that 10 spot, and we have a few guards there with Darius Acuff and Kingston Flemings and Tyler Jackson right now. All guys that can just create so easily off the dribble, really get to their spots. Guys that continue to get better at setting up their teammates and elevating the guys around them. So interested to see how that guard group continues to play out. But for me in 2025, starting at the top, big one was Cayman Malawak, a guy who been playing for South Sudan's national team, a guy who's been with NBA Africa. That was actually my first time seeing him at the Tarkanian Classic in late 2022, a guy who jumped out super early, 7 foot plus, looks like he's 7'2" now, still just 16 years old. And the big thing that stood out right away was his rim protection, a guy who can just shut down the paint really easily, plays above the rim, and just, you don't see many 7'2" guys running on the floor like he does at such an early stage. Plays with an extremely strong motor and also beginning to shoot the ball with more consistency now. Definitely still needs to put the pieces together a little bit more, get more reps, and just understand how to consistently impact offense, like in the flow of an offense. But a guy who does a ton of very interesting things. I think he's a guy who, we had a little bit of argument about it, but a guy who I think is like squarely in the mix for the second overall spot in the class. But right now we have him settled in at the 4 spot.
Yeah, you're acting very coy about it right now, but to the listeners and viewers, Max Spellman has a Cayman poster in his room. I'm positive of it. I get texts from Max every day, it seems like, about what, like, different highlights, different, like, oh, we need to put him here, we need to bump him up, we need to do this. So I officially think that Cayman is your kid in this class that you're just the biggest fan of.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a guy that obviously if he was playing in America and been playing at one of these big schools, he's a guy that would be squarely in the mix for everyone. But I think as more people continue to see him and just see what his skill set is right now, but also the things that he's flashing from time to time on both ends of the floor, he's going to be a guy that is in that top 5 of 2025, excuse me. But a few other guys, just briefly, that I really liked going into 2025's ranking updates that I thought we could give another boost to. First one was Joshua Lewis, a guy that I really liked last summer, and then took a big leap forward. He's 6'7" now. Continues to shoot the ball at a really high level. We have him in the top 30, and no one else has him, I believe, within their top 80. So a guy that we're extremely high on within that class, and a guy that I think even has another level to hit. He's a 6'7" wing out of South Florida. So excited to see more of him. Then the other one was Nigel Walls, big man out of Texas. Pretty young for the class. Another guy, like I mentioned earlier, that I feel like he's just starting to turn that corner in his game a little bit. Obviously, bigs come along a lot slower than a lot of other guards and wings. So I think he's a guy that best basketball is still well ahead of him. Moving down,
you've been on the Nigel Walls train for a couple months as well. That's another guy that you've texted about a few times.
Yeah, I think just with those young big guys, it's so important to see like steady progression. I feel like a lot of them get stagnated as they get into their sophomore, junior year, and obviously a lot of them don't really develop. But he's a guy that I feel like every time I see him, he gets a little bit better, and I think just does a ton of interesting things to keep tabs on moving forward. Moving into 2026, I know you had one guy that seems like he's risen every time we've updated the rankings now. What do you like about Aiden Chronister?
I just love the tools and what he can be. Like, I love the thought of what he can be 3 years from now. He's about 6'7", still growing, good athlete. Just like I said, got all the tools in the world. Multi-positional defender, can score from all over, good shooter. I think he's a guy that could make a play for top 20, top 25 in that class. And plays for 𝘿evelopment, and every time I've seen him, he just produces, and I come away more intrigued than the last time I saw him.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. It feels like literally he's made a leap every time we've updated the rankings because someone new has seen him and come back, and just has always had great things to say about him. So definitely a good one. A few other guys briefly outside the top four, within the top 40 that I really liked. Gabe Solarski, one out of Chicago that's starting to visit a few Big Ten schools here, just super skilled, put together great spring and summer with Main Streets. Dean Rucker, a kid out west in Utah, super skilled, a little bit similar to Chronister in terms of just having a very high skill level, very high level feel for the game, can really shoot it. Has great size at about 6'6", 6'7". So he's a great one. And then Kevin Thomas, one of the more underrated kids, I think, just doesn't have a ton of chatter on his name right now, but I think that's going to come as he gets into this year and then maybe next spring. 6'6", 6'7" wing out of Florida. Really twitchy, can really handle the ball as well and can really get to the rim. So those are just a few others. And then the big two in 2026 were Caden Allen and then Dakari Spear. Dakari Spear, I know a guy that you really like as well. So two guys that we have squarely inside the top 20 now. Caden Allen headed down to Montverde Academy, so could be a name if he gets the chance to get some time in that lineup down there. A kid that could generate some more buzz soon. Moving on, looking ahead now instead of looking back, who are some guys that you think are in for a potentially big leap this winter in the high school season?
I think the obvious answer here, just based on playing time available as compared to last year, is Slim Rogers. He plays for Players Play out of California, goes to Centennial in California. Obviously, they had Jared McCain last year, so he sat behind them, didn't really get that much of a opportunity, and then he'll be the guy this year, most likely. I liked him with Players Play this spring. Good guard with a good build to him, good scorer, good facilitator, did everything well, honestly. I like him as a defender. I think he's a guy that'll lead a national recruitment within the next 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. I know he's another guy that just every time people get to see him, come away super impressed, it feels like. So that's a great one. A guy that we have definitely within the top 60 now, and I think a guy that has the chance to just continue to rise from here. For me, I kind of went an easy way out in terms of two guys that people probably don't quite know about in the United States right now, but two guys who have a ton of success in Europe, and both are transferring to NIBC schools now. First one is Dwayne Aristode transferring to Brewster Academy, originally from the Netherlands. He's a 6'7" wing. Can really shoot it. Great athlete. Guy that I think is going to continue to get stronger, polish up his handle a little bit more, but super talented guy. I think we have him inside the top 35 now. So definitely excited for more people to see him, and a guy that is ready, drawing interest from Duke, UCLA, Xavier, a bunch of other big-time programs from all over the country. The other one is, pronunciation aside, name is Mika Murinen, originally from Finland, put together a big showing at FIBA play in U16s just here recently. He's transferring to Sunrise Christian in Kansas. So a guy that I think is also going to draw college interest pretty quickly. Know a few Pac-12 programs are already in the mix and swirling a little bit there, but I think a guy that could quickly gain some momentum. We've got him inside our top 60 now, but a guy that I think once he hits the ground here, going to gain some momentum pretty quickly.
I've yet to see either one of those kids, and you watch a lot more FIBA basketball than I do. Who would you say is the better prospect out of those two right now? And who do you think will be the better one long term?
I would give the edge to 𝘿evelopment probably. Just a higher level athlete, has a ton of upside there, and I think a guy that can be really, really high level on the defensive end long term. Mika is a little bit different. He's been a lot more flash based. Obviously, was super productive at FIBA, but 6'9", can really shoot it, can handle the ball better than really any 6'9" guys that you're going to see around the United States. So he is really high upside. The flashes are really intriguing, but both really high level guys. Like both quickly after seeing them, and Dwayne's a guy that I've been watching a little bit more and have a bigger sample size of, but both guys that I think belong in the top 60 in 2025 for sure.
And then a fun topic that across the industry is everybody getting to flex their muscles on players that they're higher on than the rest of the industry. Who are some players in 2024 or 2025 that you feel like you are higher on, or we are higher on than everybody else, or that the rest of the industry is lagging behind on?
Yeah, the big ones I think we talked about a little bit are VJ Edgecombe and 𝘿evelopment. 𝘿evelopment especially. Both guys we've had in the top 10 for about 3 or 4 months now. 𝘿evelopment is a guy that we've had in the top 5 since after session 1 of EYBL. Like after session 1, it seemed pretty clearly that leap was here. But I think those two are the main ones. And then 2 others that I've come around a ton on are Nick Cody out of Texas, a guy that we have inside the top 25 now. I think his game just really translates to the highest level, and a guy that what we look for so much of in terms of evaluating all 4 classes is that progression, and a guy that's made a huge leap from last summer when I saw him to this year. So excited to see what's next for him in terms of development. And the last one is Demarius Owens, a guy that been playing for City Rocks, a guy that has been pretty known for a while now, but I think just made, in terms of similar to Nick Cody, has just made leaps in his game. Really high level athlete, starting to really shoot the ball. It's been a bit streaky, so I think that's the big thing for him in terms of ironing that out. A really high level defender as well, and it's going to play for a great fit at Marquette with Shaka Smart. So I think those are both good ones, and ones that we're higher on than the rest of the industry. But how about for you, just in terms of 2024, 2025 guys that were the highest on?
The first one that comes to mind for me is Donnie Freeman. Helped Team Takeover win Peach Jam this year, heading to IMG, committed to Syracuse. He has really started to hone in his game, becoming more polished, and the sample size is small, but I like his trajectory as a shooter. He's shown some potential there, and I think he's just he's becoming a good all-around forward that will be able to play inside and out at the next level and at the pro level at some point. And then Jaden Waynes is another one rankings-wise. I think, like you said, or like we were talking about earlier, I had him as my number 2. You had him as your number 3. I don't think you can look at this class on the terms of pro potential. With him being 6'10", 240, and just turned 16 years old with his full skill set, I don't think you could have him lower than 3rd in this class. And that's where we have him. But nobody else has him ranked that high. A lot of people have him outside the top 10. And then one for 2025, I'm a big fan of Xavier Robinson. probably the best defensive guard that I've seen in that class. Plays for George Hill, All-Indy. Junkyard dog type of guard. Will get up in your grill, guard you 94 feet. He's a good athlete. His offensive game is expanding. It's mostly downhill drives right now, but once he figures out his shot, he's a legit two-way prospect.
Yeah, absolutely. Now off to the side, just a few other guys that have made big leaps, whether it be 2024, 2025, 2026. A few guys to just talk about that made significant leaps this update. First one, wanted to ask you about Aiden Sherrill, a guy that I know you like a ton, a guy that we had around probably the 40 mark floating around there for a little bit, and a guy that I know you were felt pretty strongly about making a jump there.
Yeah, I think he's just a good all-around ball player, and I like his outside shooting ability. I think that's going to translate to the next level. I think he's going to take the next step, especially if he chooses the right college or whatever path that's next for him. But I like the way that he can impact the game in a multitude of ways. He's a pick-and-pop big, good athlete that can run the floor very well. So I've always been a big fan of him. I thought we were too low on him in the last rankings.
Yep. The other one in 2025 I wanted to ask you about, and a guy that I've seen less than a view, but one that I'm excited to see hopefully some more of soon, but that's John Clark. Wanted your thoughts on him and just what could potentially be next for him in development.
I think John Clark can become one of the best prospects in a loaded Texas class. I didn't know about him until the spring, and I saw him put up numbers and produce in 3 straight games in one weekend. Defended very well, took it to higher-ranked players than him. Really just made his mark in every game. And I think he's another guy that will lead a national recruitment sooner rather than later, and a guy that could continue to climb up the rankings very quickly.
For 2026, I wanted to ask about John Sanderson, a guy that's starting to take some Big Ten visits here, really skilled guard out of the Midwest. What's impressed you with him?
Like you said, very skilled. That's what he is just a very skilled guard. He scores the ball so well that a lot of people don't view him as a point guard, but that's what he is. He's just a scoring point guard that can also facilitate. About 6'3", 6'4" now. Ambidextrous is what his dad says. I've only seen him shoot one way, but his dad says he's both. And then he's just a guy that I think is going to be a top 25 player in that class very soon. I think he could make a push for top 15 over time. I'm very bullish on how he plays, and his IQ, his just feel for the game has been amazing every time I've watched him play.
Yeah, I think with 2026 rankings and just underclassmen rankings in general, it's really easy to be looking for the 6'6", 6'7" wing with the high upside, stuff like that. But those guys like John Sanderson, a guy like Gabe Solarski, there's a few others that come to mind, who just have that really high skill level when they're super young. It's like, at the end of the day, maybe those are the guys that we want to be taking bets on. Obviously, the wings are intriguing and the upside is awesome, but when you have that skill level at such an early stage, it feels like the rest kind of falls into place over time. So definitely like that bet with John Sanderson.
The question I have for you is, what's your first thought that comes to mind when you're going to be the first person in the industry to release 2027 rankings, 1 through 150? What is going through your mind as we head into that?
I think it's definitely a challenge. The whole process is a challenge, and I'm excited to see just kind of people being able to see these kids for the first time. I think there's a ton of interesting prospects, especially at the top. But I think we've been watching these guys. Obviously, you came back a little bit more recently, but I've been watching these guys for about 8 or 9 months now and just feel strongly about the evaluations and all the different guys that we've seen and the work that we've put in just as a team. So excited for sure, but definitely some fear mixed in that.
Well, you're being too humble. Literally anybody that ever texts or calls me about a 2027 kid, I just forward them your number. I'm like, Max is the guy. Like, he's seen all these kids more than anybody else. Like, that's the guy.
Definitely put in a lot of work with this class. So excited to see how it comes together.
All right. Well, we're gonna wrap it up there. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Travis, thank you for joining us once again. Definitely we'll have you on again soon. Talk some more rankings, talk some more basketball as the season approaches here. But thank you again.
All right, man. Appreciate it.